Welcome to Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. I am your host, Heath Cummings, joined today by my good friend Joshua Cho. You know him on Twitter at JBChoKnows. Thank you for being here today, friend.
Always glad to be here, talk football with you.
You know, there's a lot of people who do Twitter better for fantasy football than what I do. You are certainly one of them. You've been more and more active the last couple of years. I just want, first off, I would tell everybody, go follow this guy, but just kind of give them a sampling of what they're going to get on, I guess, your X feed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just try to help people win in their fantasy leagues. I love connecting with people. So I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can, but I do have daily posts going from Monday through Friday. Just kind of my thoughts, my key takeaways from the weekend's games, as well as waiver wire ads. I just had that drop this morning. Just who you're going to add to help you win your championship this season. And so just kind of going through the season together, and it is a journey and there's a lot of ups and downs. So it's just always a lot of fun to connect with people and experience all of that together. But yeah, there's content daily going out in the mornings around 9 a.m.
So yeah, like you say, it's a journey, a lot of ups and downs. I feel like these first 3 weeks have been a journey, into themselves, like just wild and crazy things happening every single week. What's up, cousin Ernest? Thanks for being here. Appreciate you being here as well, Alex. And we're going to try to parse through that a little bit. On today's show, we're going to go through a Superflex top 24 two-man mock. Just the two of us going through and taking turns picking. And most importantly, I want to talk about like what's actually changed. Because I think it's really difficult when we've got 3 games of football that have been played by every team in the NFL. Yeah. And this dynasty game is supposed to be one of patience and the big picture and the long term. But you can't stand still either, or you really miss the trends. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about some deep waiver ads at the end of the show. Had a very good question about backup quarterbacks that was, I think, inspired by Andy Dalton just looking spectacular. Man, how much fun is it when Andy Dalton comes back? Wow. And even more fun when he lights up the Raiders. The only thing would be better is if he lights up his former team, the Bengals, in week 4. And then, we're going to start the show like we always do with 3 questions for our guest. And I want to start with just kind of how do you, and you could either be how you advise fantasy managers or how you yourself do it. As like every time I have you on, I have people in the industry saying, oh, he's a great dynasty player. So how do you process information in season as a dynasty fantasy football manager? Are you reacting quick? Or are you kind of like, I need to see a larger sample size?
So, I mean, that's a great question. I think it's interesting because I started as just solely redraft, and then I got into dynasty and I fell in love with it. And when you think about dynasty fantasy football, it's true. I mean, long after the season is over, we're still grinding, trying to figure out, what's next, what kind of trades to make, values, ups and downs. And so I think the key is, as a dynasty player, you have to keep your perspective on the long term. But I do think that you have to learn to react quickly. So in redraft, you actually get kind of great opportunities to buy and sell for your dynasty, perspective. So, for example, if you're trying to build a competitive team, that's going to win you multiple championships, and you're a win now guy, and you've just lost, Puka Nacua and, Christian McCaffrey, you have some decisions that you have to make if you're going to continue on and be a league winner this season, right? So, if you lost Puka Nacua, you could have probably moved him early on for someone like Rashee Rice plus a little bit of draft capital, right? And that would have worked out perfectly. Or if you're someone who's struggling and you just want to get draft picks and you're not quite a contender, if you have someone like J.K. Dobbins or even Jordan Mason that you've been kind of storing up, this is the perfect time for you to sell, right? Sell high, get some draft picks, and get ready to store up for more and more value. So it's kind of an interesting thing where for Dynasty, I'm always thinking about value. And then in redraft, it's really based on need because you have this season to do it, right? So for Dynasty, you don't want to lose, that long-term perspective, but process it in that perspective and then react quickly and make your moves so you can maximize value.
Yeah, I've got a team that needs to rebuild badly. And I made a mistake before the season. I had an offer for McCaffrey and for Kelsey.
Oh, man.
And I didn't take it. and they've been awful. Now, I think the offer was included Ayuk and Dalton Kincaid. So,
Okay.
like, the guy who made that offer hasn't actually had anything good happen for him yet either. But I did send out, like, just a message to the league. Chris Godwin, it's a salary cap league. Chris Godwin is a number one wide receiver in his
Yes.
prime on a cheap contract. Come get him right now, please,
Yeah.
before something goes wrong with him, because that's kind of the way you have to view veterans as a rebuilder, is they are ticking time bombs. And in certain leagues, they're costing you draft position, even if you're not starting them. Now, I want to give you a chance to do a little victory lap here. I'm going to turn it into a two-man victory lap, but also talk about how sustainable you think it is, because something that's been surprising to most people this season, Sam Darnold has looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Daniel Jones is a top 15 quarterback in scoring, fantasy football scoring for this season. And really the only bad game he had came against the Minnesota Vikings defense that looks like it might just be better than anybody else. And so how much are you buying Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones, or are these just obvious sells?
So it's funny you ask, am I buying on them? Because it's impossible to buy when you already own them in pretty much every league that you're in. So, Daniel Jones being top 15 quarterback, that really actually shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, in the sense that we know that he has been low-key a Konami code guy, right? He can rush for good yardage on the ground, and against good, bad defenses, mid defenses, he can put up numbers, and he's doing that this season in 3 short weeks that we've had. I actually think that I would hold on to him. It just depends on what people are willing to offer. But he's more of a buy than a sell most often for me, because in terms of optics and how people view him, they just always like to dog on him. So players like that, you can usually get on the cheap. You almost don't have to do any work to buy low, even on someone who's doing really well. So, I would be comfortable actually probably moving a future second for him right now. And some people might say that's way too high, but in a Superflex Dynasty league where quarterbacks are at a premium, throwing a second out there for Daniel Jones, and even probably, I would try to make a way through negotiations to get maybe a third, back with him, or a fourth. But yeah, I think that I'd be willing to buy him around those prices. I'm not ready to throw out a first round pick for him or anything like that. But if I'm selling, I would.
I think the interesting thing with both Jones and Dalton is, like, you almost have to consider them 1-year assets right now.
Yeah.
Because we don't know if either one of them are going to have a job next year.
Sure.
Darnold probably more likely, I guess, than Jones, but
if he keeps it going, I mean, there's no way that, right now he's actually leading the league with 8 touchdowns, passing touchdowns. And in fantasy, he's top 5 right now. So like on a per game average. So we're talking about someone, obviously we can't just automatically assume he's going to keep it going, but there's no way he doesn't get a contract somewhere to start. Right.
Right. No, I think if he keeps it going, yes.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah.
So those were 2 guys that you were high on coming into the year. They've been fantastic. You're just like sitting back and cackling and enjoying it. Who's one guy that through 3 weeks of the season has just completely changed your mind, either direction, but somebody that's just been like, either you were out on and now you're in on, or vice versa? Who's changed your mind?
So I thought about 2 guys that came to mind just immediately. First is a running back, for the Buffalo Bills, James Cook. Now, there are some guys, some of my friends in the industry, who really have always loved him and are like, he is an RB1. And I kind of questioned it, because one of the big things that I saw was that the Bills really, it seemed like they were allergic to using him at the goal line. But this season, he's already scoring, several touchdowns. And
he's set a career high in rushing touchdowns already.
Exactly right. So, 3 weeks into the season. And so if he's going to get that kind of usage, I have to change my perspective on him, that it's not necessarily a him problem, but maybe he just wasn't getting the opportunities for whatever reason with the scheme and whatever it might be. And now that he's getting that, I think you really do have to raise his value in terms of not only this season, but also in Dynasty. So yeah, James Cook definitely has changed my mind in the first 3 weeks. And on the negative side, man, Trevor Lawrence, he has looked like he has taken 2 steps back, right? He looks pretty abysmal, under center right now. I still believe, we know he has the talent and he has the ability, but there's just something that's off, and I'm not sure what it is, but, hopefully he figures it out. He was someone in Dynasty. I mean, when he was coming into the league, people were just like, they were ready. He's a generational guy, and he's going to be, the next, the QB1 possibility. Andrew Luck, like a lot of names being thrown out. But yeah, he's definitely someone that has lost a lot of value, even for a super flex league.
Braden asked a very good question, and it's we're going to add the fourth question because it's a near impossibility. Really, it's really difficult. I've been dealing with this in one of my dynasty leagues, and it's how do you get a second quarterback in a super flex league when you don't have one to get back? Now, he gave some context. He didn't just go into the year thinking he wouldn't have a second quarterback. He had Bryce Young.
Yeah.
That obviously didn't work out. Apparently missed out on Andy Dalton. So he has Aaron Rodgers. He has Skylar Thompson. He can't get a second quarterback, and his league is being mean and won't trade him one.
Yeah.
Like there's a couple of ways. One is you tank and then you draft one early in next year's draft. Two is you go get Andy Dalton off the waiver wire, which you missed apparently.
Yeah.
And then I guess three for me, and I hope you have a better answer than this, is you just look for old quarterbacks on bad teams.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you nailed a bunch of the different ways to do it. If this guy ever decides to start another, join another league, I would say the cheapest time to buy a quarterback is during the draft of a startup.
Right.
That's why I go heavy on quarterbacks and Superflex. It's a shame that he had Bryce Young and now he's got Skylar Thompson. So really he still only has one QB in Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
And so I would just say he has to keep on fishing for someone or something. If he needs a second quarterback this season, I don't know, Aaron Rodgers, I think he'll be good as long as he doesn't get injured. But he's going to have to do some work. Just scour the waiver wires for backups. I know we're going to talk about that later in the show. Or just start sending out trades. There are people who have older quarterbacks, even guys like Russell Wilson, like that you can maybe get super cheap, and maybe he ends up starting. You just kind of have to put the bait out there, right? And just see what happens. Throw the net out, see which QBs can possibly be returned, or look for a team that has an abundance of quarterbacks. And you might have to overpay a little bit, but if you need a QB this season, you might have to shell out a little bit more than you'd like to do in order to have a second quarterback.
I think that word you said that's key there, and I just take the might away. You're going, like, if you're trading for a quarterback in a super flex league, just throw value out the window to a certain extent. You're going to have to overpay. It's going to cost more than it should. If your team's good enough, then it's worth it. If it's not, then you probably ought to just tank and get one in the draft next year. Let's take a short break, and then let's draft the top 24, the top 24 in Superflex right after this.
A Quiet Place Day 1 is now streaming on Paramount Plus. It's thrilling, terrifying. It will make your heart pound out of your chest. A Quiet Place Day 1, now streaming.
I absolutely love those promos. They still, I've watched the movie and the promos still kind of get to me a little bit.
I'm terrified right now.
It's been fantastic. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we will alternate every other pick for 24 picks, see what the top 24 looks like now. It looks like we've even got a little bit of a graphic here so people can follow along at home. I'm going to give you the first pick for two reasons. One, because you're my guest and I want to be a good host. And for two, because I've got a pretty good feeling who you're going to take, and I don't feel like I deserve him after not ranking him as the QB1 this year. So go ahead.
All right. Without fail, no one should ever question it. At this point, Josh Allen will be the 1.01 here in Superflex.
Yeah, and if I wanted to push back at all on how wrong I've been about Josh Allen, what I would say, and I'm not doing this because who am I? What I would say is we've seen 3 games.
Yeah.
He's now below 25 pass attempts per game in those 3 games. They've gone super run heavy. He's also below 30 rush yards for the first time in forever. But he has 9 touchdowns, so nobody cares. So I won't say that. Josh Allen is the 101. I don't think anybody's going to argue with you there. I'm still going to take Patrick Mahomes as my QB2, and it's been like a minute since Patrick Mahomes has actually justified this, to be honest. But I still think like when I'm looking at, especially for dynasty purposes and especially in Superflex, he's the guy that I think is probably going to be elite for the next decade.
Yeah.
I'd rather have Lamar right now in this season. I'd understand if you said you'd rather have Jalen Hurts, and it might be like 5 minutes and Jaden Daniels is in this conversation after what we saw from him last night.
He looked
But
amazing.
for now, in a dynasty Superflex league, I will take Patrick Mahomes. We're going Josh Allen. We're going Patrick Mahomes, and you get the third pick.
Okay, just one caveat real quick. I think especially if it's a 6-point passing touchdown league, I do think that Mahomes' value, does go up. But I also have him as my number 2. I was hoping he could maybe slip to 3. For 3, I do actually have Lamar Jackson as my 3. Now, one of the things with Dynasty that I do think about here is the reality that Dynasty leagues may not last super long. Okay. So I know that this is kind of part of the game that shouldn't be there because I'm committed to my dynasty leagues and I want to be there for the long haul. But a lot of dynasty leagues kind of flame out around 3 or 4 years. And so someone like Lamar Jackson, even though the way that he plays, a lot of people are worried that he's going to sustain injury from all the running and things like that. Just his output is, it's elite with his rushing upside and with his throwing too, although at times, it leaves a little bit to be desired. So Lamar Jackson pretty easily at 3 for me in Superflex Dynasty.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like you mentioned the caveat, and I should have just gone ahead and said it. Like CBS leagues are generally 6 points per pass touchdown. So I'm going to call this this is definitely a 6 points per pass touchdown draft. I'm just kind of filibustering here so I can update my dynasty rankings a little bit to see if Jaden Daniels is now in this next position. He's not yet for me, but he might be soon. He looked so good last night. He leads the NFL in completion percentage right now, and he's one of the best rushing quarterbacks. I'm still going to take Jalen Hurts. I'm a little bit concerned this week about him. If he doesn't have AJ Brown, if he doesn't have Devontae Smith, but those 3 are tied together for the long-term future. And so I still think the top 4 quarterbacks are the top 4 quarterbacks: Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Jackson. I'm not willing to commit that I will believe that at the end of this season because Jaden Daniels is coming, but I'll take Hurts at number 4.
Okay. Great pick. Those are my top 4, actually. Exactly. Kind of for me is chalk that way. Now number 5 might surprise people. But I am a big time believer in Kyler Murray.
Okay.
So I'm actually going to take Kyler Murray here at 5. Still, I mean, you'll notice a trend. Even Mahomes, can rush a little bit, but Kyler Murray, his rushing upside, and now that he has Marvin Harrison Jr. and we see him actually making contact with him, after that first game where everyone was panicking, I think he's going to continue to be a star in the league for a long time. As much as everyone wants to make fun of him for being short and all this and that, I think he has the goods to be really a league winner, from the QB position.
I don't have any problem with that pick. I think there is a tear drop off after those top 4. I wish, like Kyler, especially with Marvin Harrison and in this offensive system, we haven't seen him in the system a whole lot. One game can kind of move my opinion a little bit more than it should. And I wish it looked a little bit better last week. But you know what? Your boy Sam Darnold's number 1 wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, is going to be my number 5 pick. And we talk about like we'd like to have a decade. You probably don't have a decade with these quarterbacks. You probably don't have a decade with Justin Jefferson, but you've got 6 or 7 more years, and it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It can be Josh Dobbs. It can be Nick Mullins. It can be Sam Darnold. It can be Kirk Cousins. It doesn't matter. He's the best wide receiver in football. I don't know at what point you stop taking quarterbacks in the first round of a Superflex draft, but I'm ready to take Justin Jefferson really as early as number 5. Yeah,
I mean, he definitely justifies that with his play. I think sometimes people just want to find something to worry about with Justin Jefferson, but I never knocked him down at all because I was a believer in Sam Darnold. But we're seeing that he can find his man there, so I think that's a great pick at 6. I will actually go with another quarterback in the next pick. I still have Joe Burrow as a solid dynasty, especially in a 6-point passing touchdown league dynasty quarterback and player. So he hasn't quite had all of his weapons at his disposal. Everything from the contract stuff with Chase to T. Higgins being injured. But Yoshivas, he looks really good right now. Filling in. They have Jermaine Burton, who's, a rookie there that there were terrible, like headlines and news about his character and stuff. But that's all of a sudden done a 180 because he had like one conversation with Zach Moss or something like that. So I think they're getting ready to deploy him, in the aerial assault. So they're going to keep surrounding that guy with weapons. And the more that they do that, he's going to keep on producing.
Is this a format specific selection? In other words, if I had said we're doing 4 points per pass touchdown, would it be a different quarterback?
Honestly, you were talking about Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have right now is between Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. Obviously, the 1 and the 2 in the NFL draft. I've seen really special throws and things from Caleb that really were the reasons why I think I was happy that the Bears took him, with the number 1 pick. But games like yesterday, Jaden Daniels, I mean, I know it's easy to react quickly, but he has looked very, very good. Knowing when to run, not making too many mistakes, and hitting all his throws. You see those throws to Terry McLaurin? My goodness.
Incredible.
I mean, it was just, McLaurin, props to him too. He's someone that I've always been high on. And so I definitely think that Jaden Daniels is part of the conversation in around this middle of the first round of Superflex Dynasty.
I might be the only reason that we don't just have 12 quarterbacks in the first round, but somebody's got to take somebody besides a quarterback. So I'm going to do it again. Despite the slow start, I will take CD Lamb here. It's basically for me, like we've got 6 or 7 quarterbacks and 3 wide receivers that I think should kind of go in the first 10 picks. And you're not going to take any of the wide receivers, so I'll just take them all. I do think, like with Chase, with Lamb, with Ayuk, for me, I'm mostly still just shrugging off the slow starts that I think probably had to do with the fact that maybe football players do need to practice. Maybe they should even play a preseason game or 2. But Chase, we saw kind of break out of it last night. When does CD Lamb get to play the Commanders? He gets to play them twice this year. He'll be fine. I'm taking CD Lamb here.
Yeah, Lamb, not many people have been talking about him, but he has had a pretty slow start, this season. And but I'm definitely not worried either. I think, he and Dak are going to be together for a long time. And he actually, I think, can push for being the wide receiver 1, but he just needs to get on it. So I am going to go with a quarterback, although the wide receivers you've taken are, if this was a true 2-man league and we're like going against each other, I think I would have to start taking some wide receivers here. But because it's just, the first 2 rounds, I'm going to go here. I'm going to go with Caleb Williams.
Okay.
Now, people might look at that and say, well, are you sure, Josh? 3 games, offensive line is terrible. He's looked kind of pedestrian in the first couple games. I think people fail to realize this is a rookie quarterback. And to be honest, we have done him favors with offensive weapons, but with protection for through the O-line. I mean, I'm looking at some of these replays where the tackle is playing Ole, just like letting people through the interior and exterior tackles, guards, you name it. We are struggling to keep Caleb Williams safe. But week 3 was a big, I think, boost in his value. Just seeing that he can throw it. And, when he has a little bit of time, makes some magic happen, threw for, I think, over 300 yards. And so, I'm looking forward to more of that, more airing it out.
So Dylan asks, is this a redraft or starting? And people do just tune in. So I should say, once again, this is a Superflex Dynasty 2-man mock. And we're looking at basically just the first 2 rounds. So we're going the top 24 picks. And if you were just catching up, and if you're listening to the podcast and you can't see the screen, it's Josh Allen, then Patrick Mahomes, then Lamar Jackson, then Jalen Hurts, the top 4 picks. And we both kind of agree there may be a little tier break after that. Then we went Kyler Murray, Justin Jefferson, Joe Burrow, CD Lamb, Caleb Williams. I'm curious how you rank, because there were 2 rookie quarterbacks last year that we were really excited about, CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson. There are 2 this year, Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. Are you taking both of the rookies this year over the rookies from last year?
So I love CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
I think he is an absolute baller. He showed us that from the get-go. I do think that he's a little bit limited in his rushing. And so I always like to have a little bit more rushing upside with my QBs. Now, I know I took Joe Burrow. but he's a little bit more proven, because he's been in the league and he's had, I think, he finished a season as a QB3 or 4 in his history. So, but yeah, I do prefer both Williams and Daniels over Stroud.
Cousin Ernest asks for a little bit of audience involvement. I tell you what, you guys can make the 12th pick. So get ready. After Joshua makes pick number 11, I'm giving the audience control for pick 12. But with pick 10, I said there were 3 wide receivers in my top 10. I've only taken 2 of them. So now I'm going to take the third. I'll take Jamar Chase, who looked like Jamar Chase again last night.
Yeah.
The
Commanders defense will do that to you.
Yes, that definitely helps. I wish they'd just give the man his money. There's a little bit of concern there because it's the Bengals, but I mostly just think that Chase and Burrow are going to combine to basically be worth a first-round pick in a Dynasty Superflex startup for the next 3 years probably. So love getting him at 10. Still think like we're probably at least 2 more quarterbacks, but I'll be interested to see what the audience does here.
Yeah.
Chase is off the board. The top 3 wide receivers are gone. The top 7 quarterbacks are gone. The audience gets to pick number 12. But first, we've got you at number 11. Who are you taking?
All right. So it's another quarterback.
Of course, it's another quarterback.
But maybe I'll leave that to team 12, or maybe I'll leave that to the audience, and I'll go ahead and pick one of my favorite wide receivers because it is in around the same number of picks. So I will actually go here with Malik Neighbors at 11.
Malik Neighbors, okay,
Yes.
all ahead of Marvin Harrison, up to
Yes.
wide receiver 4 in the Dynasty rankings.
Yeah,
ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Tell me all about it.
I know. So this has nothing to do with my love for Daniel Jones or wanting to see him succeed as well. Right. But Neighbors really is one of those guys where in his first 3 games, I think he's 3rd most targets from any rookie in their first 3 games. And so that to me, targets are so important, and he's already getting alpha targets as a rookie. And I think that huge volume is only going to continue to grow. And he's already making spectacular plays and just showing that he was NFL ready. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's close behind. But I think Neighbors is at this point the wide receiver 1 of this class. How could you argue anything against him? Flo's not going to be happy because Flo wanted Neighbors with the 12th pick. Someone said Taysom, and we're not doing that. Dylan wants CJ Stroud. Jerry says Breece Hall. I believe those are my top 2 players in Dynasty Superflex startup rankings. It's CJ Stroud and it's Breece Hall. Bijan's right there as well. So you probably need to pick one of those 2 guys. Alex says, give me Stroud or Jordan Love. Mm-hmm. The chat is on the clock. There's Stroud, Daniels, Jawan Jennings. LOL. That was good. I think we need to give the chat CJ Stroud. And I'm going to make a pick because this is a snake draft. It's not a startup. You don't get to go back to the start with you again. So CJ Stroud is the audience pick. And I'm going to take the first running back at the beginning of round 2. You're a guy, I wonder if this has probably gone pretty well for your Dynasty teams. You're a guy that I think a lot of times takes running backs a little higher than Dynasty experts do in startups. And it's been a pretty great year if you're someone who likes to take running backs in fantasy football. Yeah, I mean, there's just, look at Saquon Barkley right now. I mean, I'm loving all of my Saquon Barkley shares. Yep. And he was going even, I think, later into the third rounds of Dynasty startups. And all he's doing is, winning people weekly matchups right now. And so I am higher on running backs. I actually do think, though, I'm shifting a little bit in that some of the top tier younger running backs right now, like a Bijan Robinson, like a Breece Hall, they're just not getting the kind of usage, that I would like to see. Right. Kind of from maybe the older school guys. Bijan Robinson has Algier, kind of behind him, taking carries. And even Breece Hall right now, seeing Braylon Allen and just what a massive man that young 20-year-old man is doing some work on the field. It does kind of hinder me a little bit from going maybe for those two. Like, so I've actually kind of shifted them down towards the middle to later parts of the second round.
I am with you on Bijan. I'm actually downgrading him a little bit. I'm not as much on Breece because even with Braylon Allen being involved, Breece is still averaging more than 20 touches per game. And so if we're going to do 20 touches a game for Breece Hall, then Braylon Allen can have his 10 to 12, and I'm not going to complain about it. I will take him here at pick 13. We'll recap round 1 just one more time for people who want to catch up. It's Josh Allen, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Lamar Jackson, it's Jalen Hurts. Kyler Murray goes 5th. Then our first non-QB, Justin Jefferson, Joe Burrow, CeeDee Lamb, Caleb Williams, Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors 11th overall. The audience took CJ Stroud. I took Breece Hall to start round 2, and you are back on the clock. Just take another quarterback.
All right. Yeah. Wait, you know what? I just realized something. Did we not draft Jaden Daniels?
He's not been taken yet.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I would not have taken Neighbors ahead of Daniels. But because it's just us two, I can take him here.
There you go.
I think Caleb Williams I have right next to Daniels. So Malik Neighbors is the next wide receiver I'd have taken, but Jaden Daniels is, I mean, he's just wowing everyone, you know, and kind of putting anyone who had any doubts about his ability to pass to rest. Some people were just trying to say he's just a rushing upside guy, but I mean, you talked about his percentages in terms of, accuracy on his throws. We saw a couple long bombs that he threw to Terry McLaurin. I mean, he's doing it all. He's making the right decisions. He's going through his progressions, running when he needs to, and being safe about it. He even slid, I think, for the first time, and everyone was cheering about that. So if he can keep himself healthy and safe and keep on throwing the rock and running the ball, I mean, he's gonna do some really special things in the league.
I try not to worry about injury concerns.
Yeah.
He is someone who I am just a little bit concerned about. So is the guy that I'm going to take next, and that's Anthony Richardson, who's just had a disastrous couple of games. I think 2 weeks ago, he probably goes in the first round of this draft.
Easily.
Things have looked bad the last couple of weeks, but I think that there is just as much upside as just about anyone.
Yeah.
And so young quarterbacks, particularly quarterbacks, he's basically a rookie with as many games as he played last year, are going to have disastrous games. I hate to tell you this, but Jaden Daniels is going to have a game in the next probably month that he just looks like a rookie quarterback again. So that's okay. We shouldn't get too down on him. Anthony Richardson is taken. We've started off round 3 with Breece Hall, Jaden Daniels, Anthony Richardson. You are back on the clock. Just 4 wide receivers taken, just 1 running back taken, and a whole bunch of quarterbacks. Where are you going here?
Can I just make one note about Anthony Richardson? That was a little bit discouraging. So I saw PFF grades for pass blocking and run blocking, and the Colts actually rate first for pass blocking. And so his disastrous passing, comes really with the best pass blocking in the NFL. So that is a little bit worrisome to me. I mean, he was throwing like absolute cannons to people just like 10 yards away and just trying to zip it in there. Like,
it's been bad. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so not to detract from that. I think that's good value actually because of his upside here. I'm going to go with another quarterback here. And I'm going to go with Justin Herbert. I mean, he's fallen out of the graces of so many people. But he's someone that I still believe in long-term. To be a quarterback who's going to lead his team, still phenomenal thrower and passer, obviously. But he's just lacking some weapons right now. I mean, he's making Quentin Johnston work. And so, that alone should elevate his value tremendously, that he's getting QJ some work and finding him in the end zone. But right now he's in a team that is kind of, I don't know. In terms of
they're minimizing the impact of their best player.
Yeah.
I know like that they've won a lot more football games than I have. And so I don't want to like say that I know more than an NFL head coach does, but in terms of like scoring points, it seems bad that we don't want Justin Herbert to do more.
Yeah.
And so I'm just worried. I think long term, I still believe talent wise, I think you're absolutely right. He probably should have gone earlier than this. I'm a little bit concerned that he's not a top 24 quarterback. Like that, we've just drafted a guy in round 2 that's not a starter in a Superflex league this year.
Wow.
But maybe the ankle will heal up. Maybe everything will be okay. Yeah. I am going to take another running back. Thank goodness. Like I can't. I was going to. I'm still going to. This is like, I think it's worthwhile looking at like who we've drafted with the first pick. And so I did start on this team with CeeDee Lamb.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have another quarterback that I want to draft in this spot, or really in the next 3 or 4.
Really? Okay.
I think some people are going to say Jordan Love, and you might. But I'm going to go ahead and take Bijan here and start a team with CeeDee Lamb and Bijan Robinson. I think what you'll generally see, even in startups, and you're right, this is the cheapest time to get quarterbacks. There are going to be some quarterbacks that go in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that are starting quarterbacks that are going to cost you a first round pick to get in a rookie draft next year if you want to trade for them. So I'm going to have to load up quarterbacks later in this draft. But what is that? Team number 8 is going to start off with CeeDee Lamb and Bijan Robinson, and probably end up with Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones later.
Okay. Wow. Bijan, man. I thought that Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson would probably fall a little bit later.
Yeah.
But those are tremendous picks for running backs. I will go ahead and say Jordan Love here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's kind of the last of the QBs, I think, kind of in the second round. There are a couple guys that are like, I want to squeeze in, later, like Purdy, Prescott, even Trevor Lawrence. I'm still not completely throwing him out, but you could probably get him later now in terms of value.
Right.
So, starting with Joe Burrow and Jordan Love for a super flex team, I think is a great start, for
and I was a little bit more skeptical coming into the year of Jordan Love, and then we saw him play one game and get hurt. So I haven't had really any reason to change that.
Yeah.
But I think if that makes sense, if you were a Jordan Love believer, then this is about the spot that he should go in. There might be another quarterback or 2 for me in the first 2 rounds, but there's certainly not another quarterback right now. I'm starting another team without a quarterback. I took Justin Jefferson with team 6 in round 1. I'm taking Amon-Ra St. Brown in the middle of round 2 here. This is a much better value than you usually see for him, a guy that oftentimes goes in the first round of startup drafts. Jefferson and St. Brown can make up for some bad quarterback play. We've seen that from both of them in the NFL.
Okay. So I got Kyler Murray here.
You got Kyler Murray. I think you've drafted quarterbacks with what have you made? Maybe 9 picks here, and 8 of them have been quarterbacks, or 10 picks and 9 of them have been quarterbacks. And Dylan said that the chat should get a pick in each round. I agree. You guys get the 23rd pick. Get ready for it. It's 4 picks away. JB is probably going to take
4
more quarterbacks before then.
No.
One of those. All right.
Yeah, as long as I'm reading this right, this is a fun team that would start for team 5.
Oh, yes.
Because another wide receiver is still on the board, and I'm going to go here with Marvin Harrison Jr.
Stacking. I love it.
Yeah,
This
would be a fun team to start with. Yeah. I mean, he it's funny how much people panicked after week 1. And then Kyler came out and said, it's not my job to throw the ball to him, or something along those lines. And then people were like, dude, that's literally your job. And so, they quickly course corrected on that. And, since then, since week 2, it's only been a couple of weeks, but Marvin Harrison Jr. will be just fine. Yeah.
Outstanding pick there. I love the idea of stacking Kyler with Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's recap round 2 real quick. We've got Breece Hall, Jaden Daniels, Anthony Richardson, Justin Herbert, Bijan Robinson, Jordan Love, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Marvin Harrison Jr. I'll tell you, if you're watching on YouTube and I'm squinting, this is testing both my eyesight and my memory as I try to piece together what color and how many letters there are and guess what the name. I know that when you're watching it on your full screen, you can see it a lot better. The little box I'm looking at is not quite as easy. So that's why I struggled with that reading. I do know how to read. So maybe a little bit of a wide receiver run happening here. And I don't know if you agree, but I feel like we've maybe also hit a little bit of a tier break again with St. Brown and Harrison coming off the board. We talked about how there isn't another quarterback that you have right after Jordan Love.
Yeah.
I hate to be the only person drafting running backs in this draft, but I do think that the next pick for me, like the place where there may not be a tier break, is at running back. Brees is gone. Bijan's gone. I'm going to take Jahmyr Gibbs with the fourth pick.
Wow.
I had a quarterback to start in Jalen Hurts. So this is not a 0 QB team, but it is Jalen Hurts and Jahmyr Gibbs.
Can I ask you a question on Gibbs, Heath?
Yes.
After seeing what he's done so far this season and the splits kind of with, Montgomery, are you still, you still have him just squarely as your RB3? I mean, he's still producing for sure. He's still putting up numbers, but he's definitely capped in terms of some of his production because of Montgomery.
Yeah, I think it was a weird game this week without any targets.
Yeah.
But if you're telling me that he's going to be like what he was the first 2 weeks, 10 to 15 rush attempts, and 6 or 7 targets every week, then yeah, I mean, we know how much more valuable we like a 20 carry running back.
Yeah.
And we know how much more valuable targets are than carries for fantasy production. So I can live with that as long as what happened in week 3, the 0 targets, is not some sort of trendsetter, because I don't want any part of that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't go. I mean, there is one wide receiver that you could have done another fun stack with AJ Brown there. But I think actually I will go with Garrett Wilson here with the next pick.
Now, I think that's another guy that has, like, we were really excited about what he was going to be this year. And he did get into the end zone at least last week, but we haven't seen the huge boom from him with Aaron Rodgers yet.
Yeah. I mean, and you see what Justin Jefferson said? He was like, with all due respect, like, I'm not Garrett Wilson.
Exactly.
I mean, there's definitely something different about, some of the other guys that we've already taken. Garrett Wilson, I do think that he's going to continue to progress and grow into kind of the alpha role as the season wears on. Rodgers is being more intentional about targeting him. And I think that the two of them do have to kind of get more on the same page. You could tell that Rodgers still favors certain players, like Allen Lazard, just guys he's used to, guys who kind of know where to be at the right times, even when Rodgers is kind of shuffling out of the pocket and things like that. So I think that that's a growing process. But in terms of the talent, I think that Garrett Wilson is still right up there. So I'm happy to have him in the late second in a Superflex Dynasty league.
We got people fighting about whether they can take him on Ross St. Brown. He's been taking guys. So the only choice I see so far, Dylan says Nico Collins is in it. Nico, and it's Dylan again. Come on. We've got a Puka pick. We've got an Achan pick.
Oh, I couldn't do that.
I don't think I want to go with Achan.
Yeah.
It's not my pick though.
Yeah.
And Nico seems to be. Oh,
that's an interesting one right now.
Like how fast and how high do you move up Rashee Rice, Jonathan Taylor? I think it's funny with Taylor, like how worried people were about Anthony Richardson stealing the touchdowns.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Taylor has just been absolutely incredible and somebody who hardly comes off the field, except unfortunately when they scored a touchdown. Man, I'm gonna let you choose, because we did get somebody who said that's the same guy saying Jonathan Taylor. Come on, guys. We do have Patrick Mahomes here. So would you take Rice for the stack? Would you take Nico, or would you take one of those running backs?
Oh man. So I have to choose one of the ones they said, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, because I see some quarterbacks that Ramachandra was putting out.
But I would say, like, and I guess you probably don't think about it this way, but I think somebody might say, if I like 3 quarterbacks, I get to pick again in 3 picks.
Yeah.
This guy's probably not going to take 2 quarterbacks. Now you might,
you
might, but most people are probably not going to start their draft off with 3 straight quarterbacks.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and what are the choices you gave me here? One more time.
Nico, Jonathan Taylor, Rashee Rice. Or Puka.
Man, Puka, because of his injury, I do have Puka high, but I do want to account for the injury right now. Sorry, I take this very seriously.
Yes.
I'm okay with Rashee Rice actually going into the third, so
Yeah.
I'm fine taking him here. To give the audience their pick.
We do have an influx at the last minute.
Yeah.
We got a lot of people lining up to vote for Rice. I think that's a good pick. You get to make one. I hate to put that pressure on you, but I think you're going to take another quarterback. You get to make one more pick for yourself now.
Okay, I am going to take Dak Prescott here.
I think that's a good pick. He's been fantastic. He's got the contract. You're starting off with Josh Allen and Dak Prescott. You're probably going to take another quarterback, but we're not going to let you because we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll get to some deep waiver wire ads.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
So we had a good email kick off our waiver wire segment here. It was from Jacob, friend of the show, been listening maybe for as long as I've been here. He said, with Andy Dalton having a great week, I was wondering which backup QBs are the best to stash. And somebody asked earlier about like, how do you get a quarterback? Sometimes it just requires carrying one who's not playing until they get a chance to play. Yeah. So do you have some backup QBs that you're making sure are rostered in your Superflex leagues?
So I actually do tend to have some backup QBs, but to be honest, in most of my leagues, I have so many starting QBs that there's not necessarily that much room for backups. But I think that you have to target players who have produced at the NFL level before, or we've seen some production in relief of starters in the NFL. So one player I would say is Kansas City Chiefs, Carson Wentz. We all know Patrick Mahomes is a magician on the field. Carson Wentz is a player who's shown that he could play, quarterback at a very high level. Has a Super Bowl ring, right? Right. Although that was, he got injured and Foles came in and everything like that. But he's someone that I would definitely roster on the Colts, right? Joe Flacco, who came in for the Browns last season and just really lit up, showed that he could still sling it. And that's why he has a position now, right, this season as a backup for the Colts now. Speaking of the Browns, Jameis Winston.
For sure. He was my number one guy, yeah.
Yeah, I think he would be so much fun for that offense.
Yes.
Deshaun Watson, he's someone that I actually advise many people to buy as low as you can on, before this season began, because he showed me that in his limited time before he injured his shoulder again and things like that last season, he's still running the ball. So he's got a lot of value there. But Jameis Winston, he's the 30-30 guy, right? 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. So we know that he would sling it. And for fantasy purposes, that would be absolutely amazing. That year, I think he was like QB3, even with 30 interceptions, because he just threw the ball so many times and threw so many touchdowns. So, and
Flo adds Michael Penix, and yes, the rookies, JJ McCarthy, those are must roster guys.
Yeah, and they're probably already rostered. Yeah.
Looking for some veterans. One guy that was on my waiver list that may not be a backup quarterback anymore, Aiden O'Connell took over for Gardner Minshew in the fourth quarter. Antonio Pierce is acting like we're having another quarterback competition in Las Vegas, apparently during this week of practice. I'm not sure that's a great sign for the Raiders that we're doing this already, but Aiden O'Connell needs to be rostered in every single Superflex league. I dropped Aiden O'Connell, I think after week 2 maybe, which doesn't feel great right now. I think another guy who was rostered pretty much universally during the summer, but may have been dropped after week 2 was Roschon Johnson, because he wasn't even on the active roster. He was one of those inactives every week. And then Travis Homer can't play this week. And so they decide, you know what? Not only should Roschon play for Travis Homer, he should play for DeAndre Swift sometimes too. And he looked better than DeAndre Swift. Yeah. You're a resident Bears fan. And so, Roschon Johnson's a must-roster player. Is he the best running back on the Bears?
Man, I'll be honest. So my take on this, Swift has been so disappointing. He really has. can they just take the ball away from him and go to like a Roshan Johnson and Khalil Herbert duo and just be like, Swift, sorry, man, you haven't been, doing the work.
Adam Azer made the great connection last week on the podcast, and it hurt me a little bit to hear it. But he said DeAndre Swift is this year's Miles Sanders, and that's what it looks like.
Oh man, please don't say that. Please don't say that. I don't know that Roshan Johnson is the best running back on the Bears.
I think Herbert's the best rusher.
Yeah, Herbert's the best rusher. I still think Roshan Johnson, he can have a role, but I can't see them going away from Swift this quickly. I think they're going to still have him be the main guy, but I think they're experimenting a little bit just to kind of see what works. And I really hope my Bears can put it together, but really without an offensive line improvement, all that's going to kind of be moot.
Well, we talk about how long a leash is.
Yeah.
And like, I think we should remember where that metaphor comes from. It comes from like when you have your dog on a leash, right? Or maybe some people, I guess, have their kids on a leash.
Yeah.
And how long the leash is like how bad is the kid or the dog?
Yeah.
And so when you're averaging like maybe 2.8 yards per carry, well, we're going to give him a little bit more time. DeAndre Swift is averaging 1.8 yards per carry.
Okay, but have you seen the plays that they've given to him? Like, did you see the one where all they needed was like a few inches at the goal line? And then they call this play where they literally let the entire defensive line in like a flood. And then he's backed up 10, 12 yards. I mean, play calling has been absolutely atrocious.
That's true.
Play calling, like those things together have not been friends of DeAndre Swift. That said, he does need to do better. Like no amount of vision, like even Barry Sanders could not have gotten out of some of these terrible defensive
Barry Sanders could have. Another former Lions running back. This is a good question. Dylan asked how much fab on Emmanuel Wilson. And I was just writing up my running back preview. He's looked very good behind Josh Jacobs. We've got Marshawn Lloyd on IR. Emmanuel Wilson's breaking a tackle every 5.3 rush attempts.
Yeah.
Would you rather add Emmanuel Wilson or Roshan Johnson?
To be honest, right now, probably Wilson.
Yeah.
A little bit ahead of Johnson. Just because I still do think that it's going to be Swift and Herbert mostly. And Roshan Johnson they called up, but I'm not sure how much they're going to actually use him going forward. Many people are clamoring for him to be the guy. But Emmanuel Wilson is an interesting guy because, I think he's rostered in most of the dynasty leagues that I'm in.
Right.
But he's definitely worth a pickup because Josh Jacobs, if he gets hurt, we've seen already from Wilson that he has some standalone value. They're giving him some touches. And at the same time, if Jacobs were to go down, like these are also like we talk about backup QBs, rostering backup running backs is another way where you can really try to help build draft capital. Because once a starter goes down, you happen to have the backup. You can move them for picks. You can move them for other, assets. So I would probably say Wilson ahead of Johnson in terms of
a couple of wide receivers here. Jalen Naylor just keeps scoring touchdowns.
Yeah.
Trey Tucker just was the wide receiver one for the Raiders for some reason this week. But we've got Jordan Addison coming back.
Yeah.
And there's so many pass catchers there in Las Vegas. Do Jalen Naylor or Trey Tucker actually matter?
So Trey Tucker, he's such an interesting guy because he was drafted in the 3rd round. And a lot of times, at least, like that's good enough draft capital for people to at least have him on their radar. But in several leagues, like you'll find him on the waiver wire. People just kind of think of him as a little bit of a burner. But I mean, he showed this preseason and then he showed this past week that if you give him the work and you give him the opportunity, he is a player that can make things happen. So he's definitely worth rostering. I mean, these are the kind of guys you want to roster, like potential high impact players, like high potential, high upside, has physical giftings to be able to do something special, even if maybe, they haven't really gotten as much opportunity. So Tucker definitely, I think, should be rostered, especially in a dynasty league where a lot of times you have much longer benches, deeper benches. But Naylor, he's not going to be someone, none of these guys are going to be people you can really count on unless they start showing more string of games. And then, like you said, Addison coming back for the Vikings for Naylor. And then Hawkinson, I'm not sure if he's going to be back this season, but when he comes back is another target.
Right.
So there's just a lot of things where for Naylor, it'll be very short-lived, I think, value. Yeah.
We've got also a tight end, the worst, like how many articles did we read this preseason about how tight end was finally good this year? and it's the worst tight end season of all time.
It's so
But
bad.
Noah Fant just scored double-digit fantasy points
Yeah.
in a game, so
Yeah.
we have to consider him now. This Seattle pass attack and it's fun, it's exciting, but who knows who's going to get the targets on a weekly basis.
Yeah, we saw JSN, right? Like have a huge week, and then
Yep.
the next week is a total clunker.
If you see Fant on the waiver wire and you're desperate at tight end, is he someone you're considering?
So again, in Dynasty, Fant should already be rostered, but if he's not, please roster him. Because again, you have kind of a prototype of guys you want at the end of your bench. You want athletic guys, and especially at tight end, you have guys. That's why I was big on Albert Okwegunam, right, for a long time, because he had the physical tools. Give him the opportunity. He's flashed, so he's someone that you could possibly see going down the line. Noah Fant is kind of in that same mold where you know that he can be a good pass catcher. He has the physical tools. With Grubb's offense, hopefully the whole passing game is being elevated, and so he's someone that I would definitely pick up. And this one kind of hits close to home because in one of my most important dynasty leagues, I played Mark Andrews, and I had Noah Fant on the bench. And guess what I lost by? By less than that difference.
The difference, yeah.
So,
I sent in August a first round pick for Mark Andrews, and it was denied. And after week 1, I had sent a second round pick for Mark Andrews, and the person just let it sit there. And I was kind of having a staring contest with them. I just let it sit there too.
Yeah.
And then after this week, I just withdrew it. I don't even know. Mark Andrews looks like an offensive tackle right now.
Man, I'm scared. I mean, I don't have too much of Mark Andrews, but even just what coach is talking about, like, is a game-to-game situation. He only saw like 30% of snaps or something crazy like that, this past game. So I mean, that's just bad coaching, right? I mean, we've seen what he can do when he's on the field. Get him on the field, get the ball in his hands. You barely have any wide receivers. You're over-targeting Zay Flowers. Like, Mark Andrews needs to be up there, right? But all that to say, tight end is kind of a fun flux kind of, position this year where you could get value. Like, I picked up Mike Gesicki in several leagues, even in Dynasty, because people had just been done with him. Another athletic, metrics guy that right now he's doing really well with, the opportunity he's been given in Cincinnati, right?
Joshua, thank you so much. Remind everybody where they can find you on Twitter.
Sure. You can find me at JB Cho Knows. And, I try to answer any questions that you might have, anything fantasy related. But also, to be honest, if there's anything that you want to talk about or, if you're ever going through anything, I really try to make myself available. I know I'm just a stranger on the internet, but, there's people who care. So just wanted to put that out there.
Awesome stuff. Always love talking to you about fantasy football and everything else. I thank you. I thank the chat for being active today. Thank you, Nada. We will talk to you guys next Tuesday.